Hey everybody, great to see you again. Here we are at the secret undisclosed shop. I'm just doing a quick check-in on Wide Red, so you might think that's what this episode's going to be about, but you would be wrong. We're going to jump back on the Ferrari Swap 914 over at the Red Barn. So let me drag myself back home and let's see what kind of progress we can make on that this week. Enjoy. Some excellent news. Check it out. The Plenum and the crap paint job that I got with the VHT wrinkle finish. Again, I'm not blaming the paint. I'm blaming the shape of this thing and my lack of skill. But so I'm sitting inside the other day and frustrated by this because it was I talked to a painter who does a lot of custom Harley stuff, and he was we were talking about, can you paint this? Would you paint this? And I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll just go with a gloss or maybe a matte finish. As sort of a, like, what else am I going to do? And then I was sitting there in front of the computer last night, and it was like, I can't remember what my exact search was, but, you know, something like, what else can I do besides wrinkle paint or rattle can wrinkle paint or some such thing? And it's almost like I could have guessed the name of this website, wrinklepaint.com. But check this out. These guys are the suppliers of the material that's used at the factory when they paint these plenums. And they're in Italy. And I contacted them and said, hey, I'm in California. Can I buy this stuff and can you ship it here? And the answer is no. Not the rattle cans, but yes, the can, they call it the liquid paint, not the spray paint. So I will be ordering some liquid red, but check it out. They got blue and silver and black. They also do some really cool stuff. I may order some of this too, but they do like a brushed or a stainless metallic kind of a color. They do chrome paint. And so for things like fiberglass bumpers, where you don't want it to look like just painted black or something, I'm wondering if it, you know, we could fake a metallic or a metal-ish finish. You know, there's also chrome wrap. But anyway, back to the paint. It looks like I will be able to get an essentially exact factory finish wrinkle red on the Plenum. And you might have caught this in the background. This is a used valve cover that I purchased because, as you may recall, I think I mentioned this in an earlier episode, I don't like all the fasteners that I have to have in order to get these 370Z coils to be mounted correctly. The reason for the 370Z coils is that the Ferrari 360 coils do not have internal igniters, and to run an aftermarket ECU, would have to run an external igniter system. I didn't feel like doing that, but since these are a completely different shape, I had to make these intermediate plates, as you recall. But I don't really like how busy everything is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to machine these bosses off and then figure out where this bolt hole is relative to that circle and weld a new boss on to this one that orients the coils in the right direction and all that good stuff. And then these, assuming that works, I'll get another one and do the same thing. And then these will also be painted red. So I'm going to go with the red plenum and red valve covers. I think that's a pretty cool look. It's a little bit custom. Not a lot of Ferraris have that, which is exactly what I want. I think that'd be super cool to look in here and just see the red plenum and the red valve covers. Not that those look bad, but they need to be painted again anyway because they got some chips and not damage, but just, you know, you can see the wear marks on them and stuff like that. But since we now know where we can get factory wrinkle paint, I can always get the gray or the silver. I can't remember what color they call it, but I can always get that color and redo those in either red or silver. Or maybe I'll have two sets and I can just switch them whenever I feel like it. Kind of like shoes. Anyway, so great news. I found the factory paint for the Plenum. Tackling the interior wiring now, and the first thing I needed to do was mount these power pickups, the bulkhead connector for the power, obviously battery, well I say obviously battery, but battery, big old honking cables that power the ECU. And to remind everybody, that's the Nexus R5, the Haltech Nexus R5, which isn't just the engine ECU, it's also got a four 25 amp circuits that power, in the case of how I'm using it, the coils, the water pump at the back. And then I'll use the PDM, which is hiding out up there, which also has four 25 amp outputs. And that will power the fuel pump and a bunch of other stuff. Oh, the fans at the front. So I've got a couple spare big 25s. But anyway, so this is now nice and tidy, and you can see the seat rail. Yes, the seats come back, but this is completely protected. Nice tidy wrap there. And then this will crank over here, and this is the part of the harness that takes care of the rear of the car, tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, and that kind of stuff. That's in that harness, and that comes out and does a straight 90. So this is just a nice tidy little bundle right here. Yes, I moved it outboard. This was an original design, and so this is all just temporary. I will get a piece, probably cut by cut send, that I'll patch into that, which will do the same thing. I'll take you around this side, and you can see what I've done. It's just a piece that's a threaded plate, and I'll integrate that into the firewall just like I did, the bulkhead pass through. So now it's time to get, I got to mount the PDM, finalize the location for that, finalize wire routing up through the front firewall, because again, headlights, turn signals up there, horn, fans, as I mentioned. Now I will say, I want to focus on making the car run. So it may be that some of this is sort of temporarily not even mounted. It's just hung in the car. I'm not going to try to do things like worry about the buttons for the cruise control or the wipers. I'm not worried about that stuff for right now. I have to account for it in anything I do that I want to have is permanent, as you well know. But like I said, this may be a little messy just to make the car run. So let's see where we end up. Did I say messy? Yes, messy. So all I've done is laid the harness, the interior harness components into the car, and I got the main engine stuff hooked up. Those bulkhead connectors hooked up to the panel, the passenger panel. And here you can see the power for the PDM, and this is that harness I mentioned. This is the tail lights, turn signals, reverse lights, all that other stuff. It clears all this just fine. And once this is all sheathed, it'll be very tidy, and it's completely out of the way. It does carry a mechanical look to it, but I'll probably come up with some little cover that'll get upholstered, and this will disappear. This is where the mess is going to be. The only circuits I need are those that are absolutely required to get the car running, and that's like the ignition circuit. I need 5-volt power and signal ground to do things like the drive-by-wire throttle, and that's, I got to split out, I got to make a splice for this because there are other things at the front of the car that need a 5-volt power and signal ground. I've got, which one was this? This is the starter. I got to have, the ignition switch. I got to have a starter switch. And then I got to hook up a CAN connection from CAN 1 back here, from the ECU, up to the PDM. And as you'll recall from earlier episodes, the ECU, you program the ECU or through the ECU, and it takes care of doing, you can set up all the rules for the PDM. And so the cool thing about that is, other than this one decent sized power cable that runs up to that radlock connector, yes, there's going to be a whole bunch of wiring coming out of that. But the nice thing about it is connecting up to that and controlling it happens through just a CAN connection, which is the twisted pair plus power and ground. So I don't have to run, a whole bunch of other circuits up there. I just run the CAN connection and power. And so, like I said, there is, wiper stuff and cruise control and sport exhaust buttons and air conditioning stuff and all sorts of things that I'm not going to worry about right now. Just the absolute basics to get the car running. And so let me get going on all of that. Well, that's unfortunate. The downside of having more than one build going on at one time is you forget stuff. And what I forgot is I've been making stuff sort of as needed for these electrical components, and I ended up running out of the right size terminals for this part of this setup. So I need to now go buy a bunch of more parts. So I'll be back when the parts are here. So I placed the order for the terminals that I need, and as it turns out, I only need a bunch of sockets. So I still have terminals with pins, so I can continue on. I can't do anything more with the drive-by-wire pedal, but I can go ahead and update this connector, which is the reverse switch on the shifter. I can update this to a Deutsch connector, and I do have a whole set of them, but again, I only have the pins, not the sockets. And the interesting thing about that is it allows me to do this piece of the harness, and if you'll notice, this is, well, this would be the male, even though this is the female housing, it's got the male pins in it. And the idea is, this does not have the locking mechanism in it yet. Oh yes, it does. It has a locking mechanism. It's that little green thing down in there. But what you want is, when you're putting these harnesses together, you've got the male pins in the female housing, and this is the socket side of things. This is the male housing that slides into that female housing. But what happens when this is all the way put together, I'm not going to put it together, but I'll show you what it does. This little protector would slide in there. I'm not going to clip it in because I got to take it apart to put the wires in. But what you can see here is that is preventing any of the wires that are in here, or any of the circuits that are in here, from having an exposed connector, right? Because they're sockets, they're protected here. And what that means is when you disconnect whatever this is connected to, the load side, the main harness, if you will, where power might be or signal might be, is protected. Whereas as you saw in the female side with the male pins, you wouldn't want that as part of the live side of your harness, because something could fall down in there and short something or. So anyway, the standard, even though if you see OEM setups, the OEM setups will sometimes violate that design, but in almost all motorsports applications, the standard is the harness gets, and any potential live circuits, those always get this side of the connector so that everything's always protected. So since I don't have any sockets, I can only go after the sensor side of things. So I'm going to go ahead and swap that out for a Deutsch connector right now. All right, I just pulled the reverse switch out of the housing, and it's it's just a simple switch. You can adjust position to make sure it's engaging correctly, lock it down against the housing of the shift block. But it's just a simple little, power in switch. And I don't like this ugly stuff, nor do I like this wrap. So I am going to unwrap this because wiring is so cool and a very overlooked part of most builds. Nobody ever asks about the wiring in these cars. They always look at the big deal stuff, engines and exhausts and interiors, but I love tidy wiring and high quality wiring. So I am going to lose this horrible cloth tape, and I'm going to use DR25 heat shrink. And so let me just get this off of here. Okay, so a couple things. One, I'm glad I took that apart because look, there's a splice in here, and it's a soldered splice. And you know from previous episodes when I was doing the wiring that I am not a fan of soldered splices. Now again, it's not that they will go bad, it's that they have a higher probability of going bad. And the reason is, you can see that this wire is flexible. It's stranded wire. And when you solder stranded wire, you turn it from stranded wire into solid wire. Any vibration that's happening in this area, again, just as an example, not saying this would fail, but any vibration that's happening in this area could cause that solid part of the wire to crack and fail. So, not that this is a critical switch, but I am not going to use those splices. So even though I thought I was going to have this much of a pigtail, I'm not going to have that much of a pigtail. I am only going to have this much of a pigtail. And I want to get rid of all of that solid wire in there. And I think I have. So that is where my Deutsch connector is going to go, right there. Now the other thing you might find interesting is that 12 volt goes in, this goes off to the other side of the circuit. When you put the car in reverse, this gets pushed in, completes the circuit, power flows through the switch and back to the reverse lights. I could hook it up that way with the Nexus R5, but I'm not going to. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to take advantage of how that ECU works, and I'm not going to use power going to this. I'm going to send signal to this, and then this is going to go directly to chassis ground. And when this switch is engaged, what the ECU is going to see is, hey, that signal wire has just gone to ground. And then it's going to tell another circuit in the power management unit, hey, send 12 volts to the reverse lights, would you? So this is literally just a switch that's going to have no power going to it, which is why I can use the plug, or the connector that I'm going to use, is what's called a a DTM. This is the DT series connectors. And the M's are minis. There's a DTM, which can handle 7.5 amps. There's a DT, which goes up to, I think, 15. And then the DTP, which is power. And those are the big ones that handle the 25 amps. So I can use the little teeny connector here. And I'm just going to go ahead and now get some DR25 on here and get these terminals on here and pin this into the connector. And again, you're probably not going to be able to see this, but there's a teeny little inspection hole in the end of that terminal. And you want to be able to see the conductors in there, and you want to have a little bit of a gap between the insulation and the base of that terminal. Whoop, and if I put it back on here, good God, I can't see anything these days. You can see it's bottomed out. I can see the conductor through the inspection hole, and I can see there's a little gap at the bottom. So that's ready to go. I've got my DMC crimper set up with the appropriate size terminals, and now I can go ahead and crimp these. That goes on, in it goes. And as you'll recall, these are single cycle tools, so you give it the squeeze, and the 8 different little jaws come out and grab that. And that is a super duper cool crimp. Let's do the other one. Now the DR25 goes on. And since it doesn't matter until I do the other side of this, which one of these goes where, I'm just going to go ahead and pin this connector now. Okay, who caught my mistake? I just pinned it into the wrong connector. So the good news is, that's what I love about Deutsche stuff, is you just unclip the little clip. It's funny, I'm like, why is this not working like it should? Oh, duh, wrong connector. So, it's this one, after all I said, right? So now, same deal, doesn't matter which side I go on. And now that's all ready to go, right? All right, and after that, there it is, reinstalled in the shifter, and I can probably come up with some tidy little clip mechanism, just hold it right there, and then the chassis harness will have a lead set that comes up here. I can probably just turn right around with one of those ring terminals and bolt it right onto this mounting point or somewhere else once I figure that out. But there we go, and that only took, I don't know, what did that take, 20 minutes? And people wonder why these builds take so long, or at least take me so long. Oh my God, and that's just one connector. But anyway, again, one less thing to do. All right, and a couple more one last things to do. This wiring stuff, as you know, can get tedious. I do want to document everything for the build, so I appreciate you guys hanging with me while I go through this. But here's kind of where we're gonna get this week. Forgetting the mess for a second, I got the CAN wire set up for control of the PDM, and the drive-by wire pedal is now wired into this. I got my splice for my 5-volt and signal ground going forward. These are the wires that drive the gauges. This is my ignition and starter. So this is really sort of the critical stuff going forward that I need to worry about. There's other stuff that's going to go forward. This is all like turn signal and horn and some other stuff that needs to get to the front of the car. And then this is the factory Haltech wiring harness for the PDM. And it looks frighteningly large, but that's because a lot of it is multiple rounds of this big deal heavy duty 25 amp stuff. I'm probably just going to use this rather than replacing it like I did back here with this smaller gauge. Just for expediency, that's the stuff I can come back and do later. But three of these are going to go forward, one for the fuel pump and one each for the two separate fans that run on the radiator. I'll have one spare 25 that I'll just truncate and hold off and see if I even need. And then the rest of those wires are all the other circuits. Some of them go up front, some of them stay in the car for things like the fuel gauge and some other stuff like that. But I'm getting there. I'm really looking forward to being done with this wiring stuff. And once that's hooked up, we are fluids in the engine, transmission, radiator, and we're going to be ready to get the guys from Haltech on the phone and see if we can get this thing to start. So we're getting dangerously close. And as always, I appreciate you guys hanging with me for all of this tedious stuff. So I'm going to call it for this week and say thanks for watching. As always, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and everybody take care. We'll talk to y'all again real soon. Bye-bye.